You know that feeling. You've just had a 10-minute conversation with someone, and somehow you feel like you've run a marathon. Your shoulders are tight, your jaw is clenched, and you're replaying every word they said, wondering why such a simple interaction left you feeling so depleted. Maybe it's that colleague who turns every team meeting into a courtroom drama, or the family member who somehow makes your birthday dinner about their problems. Or perhaps it's that friend who, no matter how much support you offer, always finds a reason why nothing will ever work. We've all encountered these people. And here's the strange part. Even when we know exactly who they are, even when we brace ourselves before seeing them, they still manage to drain us. Every single time. Today, I want to explore something that puzzled me for years. Why do certain people affect us so deeply? What's actually happening inside their minds? And perhaps most importantly, how can we protect our peace without becoming cold or cynical? Let's start with a confession. For the longest time, I thought I was the problem. When someone left me feeling exhausted, I assumed I wasn't patient enough, wasn't understanding enough, wasn't trying hard enough. But then I learned something that changed my perspective entirely. Psychologists have identified a specific pattern of behavior they call high conflict personality. And understanding this pattern isn't about labeling people as bad or toxic. It's about recognizing that some individuals experience the world in a fundamentally different way, a way that makes ordinary interactions feel like survival situations. Here's what I mean. Most of us, when we face a minor disagreement, can separate the issue from our sense of self. Someone criticizes our report at work, and sure, it stings, but we can usually think, okay, maybe they have a point about the third paragraph. For someone with high conflict tendencies, that same criticism doesn't feel like feedback about a report. It feels like an attack on their entire identity. Their brain literally processes it as a threat to their survival. This isn't an excuse. It's an explanation, and that distinction matters. Researchers have noticed that these difficult interactions tend to follow certain recognizable patterns. Understanding them can help us see what's really happening beneath the surface. The first pattern is what I call the zero-sum thinker. This person approaches every conversation as a competition. If you win, they lose. If they're not dominating, they're failing. You might recognize them by how they escalate minor disagreements into major confrontations. A discussion about where to eat dinner becomes a battle of wills. A difference of opinion becomes a referendum on who's smarter. What's happening underneath? Usually, a profound fear of being seen as weak. They learned somewhere along the way that vulnerability equals danger, so they armor up for every interaction, treating casual conversations like negotiations with an enemy. The second pattern is the perpetual victim. This person seems to attract misfortune like a magnet. Every story they tell positions them as the one who was wronged, overlooked, or mistreated. If you try to offer solutions, you'll hear that famous phrase, yes, but my situation is different. Yes, but you don't understand. Yes, but that would never work for me. It's exhausting because you genuinely want to help, but nothing ever helps. And that's the point. Unconsciously, their identity is built around suffering. If the problem gets solved, who are they? The third pattern is the responsibility avoider. When something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. The traffic, the economy, the intern. their ex, the weather, anyone and anything except themselves. What's fascinating and heartbreaking is what's driving this. Usually, it's an unbearable sense of shame. Taking responsibility for a mistake would mean confronting a feeling they've spent their whole life running from. So they externalize everything, pushing their internal discomfort onto the people around them. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Have you ever wondered why you feel physically exhausted after dealing with a difficult person? You weren't exercising. You were just sitting there, maybe nodding politely, maybe defending yourself. So why does your body feel like it went through something intense? Because it did. When you interact with someone who's in constant conflict mode, your nervous system picks up on it. Even if they're not yelling, even if they're being perfectly polite on the surface, your body detects the underlying tension. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system in your brain, starts sending warning signals. Suddenly, your adrenal glands are releasing cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, you're physically preparing for danger. But here's the cruel irony. You can't actually fight. You can't actually flee. You're stuck at a dinner table or in a meeting room, forced to be civilized while your body is screaming at you to run. So all those stress hormones just sit there, circulating through your system. And that's why, hours later, you still feel depleted. Your body was running an emergency response while your face was maintaining a polite smile. Scientists call this phenomenon emotional contagion. We literally absorb the emotional states of people around us. It's usually a beautiful thing. It's how we connect, how we empathize, how we share joy. But with high conflict individuals, it means we're absorbing their anxiety, their defensiveness, their chaos. No wonder we feel drained. At this point, you might be wondering, why are they like this? Were they born this way? Did something happen to them? The answer, as with most things psychological, is complicated, but one pattern shows up again and again in research. Many high-conflict individuals grew up in environments where extreme behavior was the only behavior that got noticed. Imagine a child whose parents were distracted, overwhelmed, or emotionally unavailable. When that child spoke calmly, nothing happened. When they asked politely, they were ignored. But when they screamed, threw things, or created chaos, suddenly, everyone paid attention. That child learned a lesson. Intensity equals connection. Drama equals being seen. Fast forward 40 years, and that child is now your coworker. They're still using the same strategy that worked when they were 5 years old. They're not trying to make your life difficult. They're trying to be noticed. They're trying to matter. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to accept their behavior, but it might help you take it less personally. So what do? How do we protect ourselves without becoming hard or unkind? The first thing to understand is that you probably can't change them. I know that sounds pessimistic, but hear me out. Change requires looking at oneself honestly. It requires acknowledging shame, fear, and pain. For someone who has built their entire personality around avoiding those feelings, change feels like death. They're not going to have a sudden realization because of something clever you said. They're not going to apologize because you finally explained your perspective clearly enough. That hope, that if we just find the right words, they'll understand, keeps us stuck in exhausting cycles. So instead of trying to change them, we change our approach. When you need to respond to a difficult person, especially in writing, keep it brief. The more words you use, the more material you give them to argue with. Stick to facts, not feelings. Maintain a neutral tone, even if you're seething inside, and close the conversation clearly. The deadline is Friday at 5. Let me know if you have questions. That's it. No explanations, no justifications, no emotional processing, just information. Equally important is knowing what not to do. When someone attacks your character, your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to list all the evidence that proves you're not what they're saying. But here's what I've learned. They're not interested in evidence. They're interested in reaction. The more you defend, the more engaged you become. And engagement is what they want. Similarly, when they try to pull you into a circular argument, the kind that goes round and round without ever resolving, don't engage. You don't owe anyone an explanation that they're just going to use as ammunition against you. And perhaps most importantly, don't take it personally. I know that's easier said than done. When someone is criticizing you, dismissing you, or blaming you, it feels deeply personal. But remind yourself, this isn't really about you. This is their internal struggle, playing out on whatever surface is available. Today, that surface happens to be you. Tomorrow, it will be someone else. Boundaries are essential, but here's the thing about boundaries that took me years to understand. You don't have to announce them. You don't have to explain them. You just have to enforce them. Instead of saying, "You need to stop raising your voice at me," you can simply say, "I'm going to step away, and we can continue this conversation when things are calmer." And then you actually step away. The power isn't in the statement. The power is in the action. This is hard because most of us were taught to be accommodating, to keep the peace, to not make waves. But accommodating a high conflict person doesn't create peace. It just teaches them that their tactics work. I want to end with something that might sound counterintuitive. You can feel compassion for someone and still protect yourself from them. You can understand the pain that shaped them and still refuse to be their punching bag. You can wish them healing and also recognize that you are not the one who can heal them. We often stay in exhausting dynamics because we feel responsible for the other person's emotions. If we just try harder, love better, explain more clearly, maybe we can fix them. Maybe we can finally get through. But here's the truth I've had to accept. You cannot light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Your peace, your energy, your emotional well-being, these are not renewable resources to be spent on people who will never be satisfied. The next time you encounter that difficult person, and you will because they're everywhere, I want you to try something. Take a breath. Recognize what's happening. See the frightened child behind the intimidating adult. Acknowledge the survival strategy that's been running on autopilot for decades. And then, with all the compassion you can muster, protect yourself anyway. Be brief, be kind, be firm, and walk away with your peace intact. Because at the end of the day, you cannot control how other people behave, but you can control how much of yourself you give away. And that, I've learned, makes all the difference.